Step away from the vehicle right now, ma'am. The command cut through the warm Monday morning air so sharply that conversations on the courthouse steps seemed to stop all at once. Ava Brooks froze beside her dark blue Mercedes-Benz, one hand still resting on the driver's door. For a brief moment, the city felt strangely quiet. The distant hum of traffic faded beneath the flashing red and blue lights reflecting across the courthouse windows. People turned. Lawyers carrying leather briefcases slowed their pace. A pair of reporters standing near the entrance lowered their coffee cups and stared. Officer Ryan Mitchell stepped out of his patrol vehicle with the confidence of a man who had worn a badge for more than 2 decades. His polished sunglasses hid his eyes, but his posture revealed certainty. Absolute certainty. To him, this was already a solved problem. Ava glanced toward him calmly. "Is there a problem, officer?" she asked. Ryan ignored the question. His gaze moved from her tailored navy suit to the luxury sedan parked at the curb, then back to her. "I said step away from the vehicle." Ava slowly complied. The heels of her shoes clicked softly against the concrete sidewalk as she took a few measured steps back. Around them, more people were beginning to watch. The courthouse tower cast a long shadow across the plaza, while sunlight glimmered across rows of glass windows overhead. Somewhere nearby, a flag snapped gently in the breeze. "This vehicle matches a report connected to a stolen car investigation," Ryan said. His voice carried just enough volume for everyone nearby to hear. Murmurs spread through the gathering crowd. Ava's expression remained unchanged. "There must be some mistake," she replied. "I have all my registration documents." Ryan's jaw tightened slightly. He had heard similar responses before. At least, he believed he had. "We'll determine that," he answered. Ava nodded once. No argument. No raised voice. No visible frustration. Just composure. The reaction somehow irritated Ryan more than resistance would have. A young attorney standing near the courthouse entrance exchanged an uneasy glance with a colleague. Something about the scene felt wrong, though nobody could explain exactly why. Ava looked toward the courthouse doors for a moment. Massive bronze handles reflected the morning sun. Today was important. More important than anyone standing there realized. Yet she said nothing. Ryan stepped closer and motioned toward the vehicle. "Who owns the car?" "I do. And you expect me to believe that?" The question lingered in the air. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Ava studied him quietly. There was no anger in her face. Only a hint of sadness, as though she had lived through this moment before. The courthouse clock above the entrance struck 9. The sound echoed across the plaza. Ryan placed one hand on his radio. "Dispatch. I need verification on the registered owner." The response crackled faintly through the speaker. Ava folded her hands calmly in front of her. The flashing lights continued dancing across the courthouse glass. One by one, more people stopped to watch. None of them knew that within the next hour, the entire city would be talking about what happened on those courthouse steps. Ava Brooks had learned long ago that staying calm did not mean staying weak. While Officer Ryan Mitchell spoke into his radio and waited for confirmation that he believed would prove his suspicions correct, Ava stood quietly beneath the courthouse shadow and let her thoughts drift somewhere far from the growing crowd. She thought about her father, 30 years behind the wheel of a city bus. Rain or shine, holidays or weekends. He used to leave home before sunrise carrying a metal lunchbox and a thermos filled with coffee. He always told her the same thing before school. "People will decide who you are before they know your name. Your job is not to become angry. Your job is to become undeniable." At the time, she had not fully understood what he meant. She understood now. Across the plaza, more attorneys were arriving for the morning docket. Several recognized neither Ava nor the significance of the day. To them, she was simply another woman caught in an uncomfortable situation. Ava glanced briefly at the black portfolio case resting on the passenger seat of her vehicle. Inside were carefully organized documents, notes, and a speech she had reviewed 3 times before leaving home. Everything about the day had been planned down to the minute. She had woken up at 5:30 that morning. She had pressed her suit herself. She had called her mother before sunrise. Her mother had cried on the phone. Not dramatic tears, quiet tears, the kind that carried decades of sacrifice. Ava remembered hearing her mother whisper, "Your father would have been so proud." The words still echoed in her chest. The radio on Ryan's shoulder crackled again. He listened carefully. His expression remained serious. Whatever he heard only seemed to reinforce his confidence. Nearby, a young reporter pulled out a phone and began recording discreetly. Another person did the same. Soon several screens were pointed toward the scene. Ava noticed, but did not react. Public attention was nothing new. Throughout law school, she had been one of only a handful of black women in some of her classes. Later, as a prosecutor, she had walked into countless rooms where people assumed she was the assistant rather than the attorney. She had spent 15 years proving assumptions wrong. 15 years arriving before everyone else and leaving after everyone else. 15 years reading case files long after midnight while the city slept. None of it had been easy. None of it had been accidental. A cool breeze swept across the courthouse steps. The American flag above the building fluttered against a cloudless blue sky. Ryan finally lowered the radio and looked directly at Ava. His face carried the confidence of someone who believed he was protecting the public. Ava studied him quietly. She did not see hatred. She did not see cruelty. What she saw was certainty. The kind of certainty that becomes dangerous when it refuses to ask questions. The courthouse doors opened behind the crowd. Several officials stepped into the sunlight carrying folders and schedules. None of them had noticed Ava yet. Not one. The clock above the entrance moved another minute forward. 9 o'clock had come and gone. Somewhere inside the building, an important ceremony was waiting to begin. And outside, standing beside a luxury sedan under flashing lights, the woman everyone was about to look for remained completely unknown. Officer Ryan Mitchell had built his reputation on trusting his instincts. For 25 years, those instincts had earned him commendations, promotions, and the respect of younger officers who viewed him as a veteran who could spot trouble before anyone else. At least that was what he believed. Standing beneath the flashing lights outside the courthouse, Ryan watched Ava Brooks with increasing suspicion. Something about her calmness bothered him. Most people became nervous when questioned by law enforcement. Most people explained too much, talked too fast, or tried too hard to prove they belonged somewhere. Ava did none of those things. She simply stood there, composed and patient, as if she had all the time in the world. To Ryan, that confidence felt rehearsed. The radio crackled once more. A dispatcher explained that the license plate had been flagged through an automated reporting system connected to a recent vehicle theft investigation. The information was incomplete, but Ryan focused on the part that confirmed what he already wanted to believe. He glanced toward the Mercedes again. The vehicle looked expensive even by courthouse standards. Polished paint reflected the morning sunlight like dark blue glass. The chrome trim gleamed. The interior visible through the windows looked immaculate. Ryan had spent enough years on patrol to know that luxury vehicles often attracted attention. He crossed his arms and studied Ava carefully. Her suit was tailored. Her posture was confident. Her expression never changed. Instead of making him reconsider, it strengthened his assumptions. Nearby, Officer Kevin Ramirez stepped out of a second patrol vehicle that had arrived minutes earlier. Younger by nearly 20 years, Kevin approached quietly and surveyed the scene. "What do we have?" he asked. Ryan nodded toward the Mercedes. "Possible stolen vehicle." Kevin glanced at Ava, then at the car, then back at Ryan. "Registration check completed?" Ryan shook his head, still verifying details. Kevin hesitated. Something felt incomplete. Did she provide identification? Ryan looked at Ava before answering. Not yet. Ava heard the exchange and calmly reached toward her purse. "I can provide identification now if that would help." Ryan immediately raised a hand. "Leave your belongings where they are." Several people standing nearby exchanged uncertain looks. The crowd had grown larger. Lawyers, courthouse staff, reporters, and passers-by lingered along the sidewalk pretending not to watch while watching every second. A courthouse maintenance worker paused beside a flower bed and folded his arms. Even he sensed the tension. Ryan noticed none of it. His attention remained fixed on the story he had already constructed in his mind. Every detail seemed to fit. The expensive vehicle, the unfamiliar face, the confidence, the timing. He believed he was one step away from proving himself right. Across the street, church bells rang faintly from a nearby steeple. The sound drifted through the warm air and disappeared among the city noise. Inside the courthouse, elevators carried judges, clerks, and attorneys toward their offices. Schedules moved forward. Meetings waited. Ceremonies approached. Outside, however, everything seemed suspended around a single misunderstanding. Ava glanced briefly toward the entrance again. People were beginning to emerge more frequently now. Officials checked watches. Staff members looked around as though searching for someone expected to arrive by 9 o'clock sharp. Ryan followed her gaze and misinterpreted it entirely. "Looking for a way out?" he asked. Ava turned back toward him and offered a polite smile. "No, officer. I am simply wondering how much longer this will take." The answer unsettled him more than any argument could have. Because for the first time that morning, a small part of Ryan Mitchell began to feel that events were no longer unfolding the way he expected. Officer Kevin Ramirez shifted uneasily as the minutes continued slipping away. The courthouse plaza no longer felt like an ordinary traffic stop. Too many people were watching. Too many phones were recording. Yet Ryan Mitchell remained focused on proving the conclusion he had reached the moment he first saw Ava beside the Mercedes. "Ma'am, I am going to need additional verification," Ryan said. Ava nodded calmly. "Then please tell me what information you need." Her answer was simple, reasonable, professional. But Ryan heard something else in it. He heard confidence. The kind of confidence he believed people earned only after they knew they could avoid consequences. "Who are you meeting inside the courthouse?" he asked. Ava glanced toward the entrance. "People expecting me." "Names?" Ryan pressed. Ava hesitated briefly, not because she was uncertain, because she seemed to be deciding how much information she should provide. "Several officials," she answered. Ryan folded his arms. "That is not very specific." Around them, the crowd continued growing. A television news van rolled slowly to the curb across the street. Two courthouse employees emerged through the front doors carrying clipboards. Both paused and scanned the plaza as if searching for someone. One checked a wristwatch. The other pulled out a phone. Ava noticed. Ryan noticed too. But each interpreted the scene differently. To Ava, it was a reminder that an important schedule was beginning to unravel. To Ryan, it appeared as if people were arriving because something suspicious was unfolding. The radio crackled again. Dispatch still had no complete confirmation regarding ownership records. The automated alert remained unresolved. Kevin stepped closer to Ryan and lowered his voice. "Maybe we should verify identification before taking this any further." Ryan looked at him sharply. "That is exactly what I am doing." Kevin nodded but remained unconvinced. Ava stood quietly beneath the sunlight reflecting off the courthouse windows. She checked the time on her watch. 9:12. Her ceremony should have started 12 minutes earlier. Somewhere inside the building, people were likely wondering where she was. Still, she refused to become frustrated. Her father had taught her patience. Her career had strengthened it. Ryan took a slow breath. "Ma'am, if you have nothing to hide, then this should be very simple." Ava met his eyes. "I agree." The answer caught him off guard. No resistance. No argument. No fear. Just certainty. The courthouse doors opened again. This time a group of officials stepped outside. Men and women in dark suits scanned the plaza immediately. One woman pointed toward the growing crowd near the patrol cars. Another began walking quickly in that direction. A faint ripple of curiosity spread through the onlookers. Something was changing. Ryan felt it. Kevin felt it. Even the reporters sensed it. Yet nobody fully understood why. Ava remained motionless beside her vehicle. Calm. Patient. Composed. As the suited officials moved closer through the crowd, Ryan realized that whatever happened next was going to attract far more attention than he had anticipated. The woman leading the group of courthouse officials moved through the crowd with increasing urgency. Her heels struck the concrete in quick, sharp rhythms while she scanned every face ahead of her. Behind her, two senior administrators followed closely, both carrying folders embossed with the county seal. Reporters immediately noticed their expressions. Something important was happening. Officer Ryan Mitchell felt the shift in atmosphere and instinctively straightened his posture. Whatever event had been delayed inside the courthouse, he assumed it had nothing to do with the traffic stop unfolding before him. His attention remained fixed on Ava Brooks. "Ma'am, until ownership is fully verified, I need you to remain here," he said firmly. Ava nodded once. "I have remained here the entire time, officer." Her voice was calm, respectful, unshaken. The response somehow made Ryan feel less certain than before. Around them, camera phones continued rising into the air. The crowd now stretched from the courthouse entrance to the edge of the plaza. Lawyers whispered to one another. Staff members exchanged confused looks. Even Officer Kevin Ramirez appeared increasingly uncomfortable. "Ryan," he said quietly, "maybe we should slow this down and wait for complete verification." Ryan glanced at him. "We are following procedure." Kevin did not argue, but his silence spoke volumes. At that exact moment, the lead courthouse official finally reached the outer edge of the crowd. She stopped abruptly. Her eyes locked onto Ava. Relief flooded her face, so visibly that several nearby reporters noticed immediately. "There she is," she breathed. One of the administrators beside her looked equally relieved. Yet before either of them could move forward, Ryan raised a hand. "Ma'am, please stay back while this investigation is ongoing." The official blinked in confusion. "Investigation?" she repeated. Ryan nodded toward the Mercedes. "Potential vehicle theft connection. We are verifying ownership." The woman stared at him as if she had misheard. For several seconds, she said nothing. The crowd grew unusually quiet. A light breeze swept across the plaza, carrying the rustle of paper programs that several courthouse employees had been holding. Somewhere in the distance, a siren echoed and faded. Ava remained composed. She did not interrupt. She did not explain. She simply watched events unfold. The courthouse official finally stepped forward again. "Officer, perhaps there has been a misunderstanding." Ryan felt a flicker of irritation. Everyone seemed eager to interfere before the facts were complete. "With respect, ma'am, I will determine that after verification is complete." The woman's expression changed. Not anger, not outrage, something closer to disbelief. Behind her, one administrator lowered his folder and quietly rubbed his forehead. Another checked his watch for what seemed like the 10th time. The ceremony inside the courthouse was now nearly 20 minutes behind schedule. Reporters sensed a story growing larger by the minute. Microphones appeared. Cameras adjusted. People who had planned to walk inside stopped completely. Every eye remained fixed on the plaza. Ryan suddenly became aware that hundreds of people were watching his next decision. Yet instead of backing away, he doubled down on the conclusion he had already reached. And somewhere deep inside, despite all the warning signs appearing around him, he still believed he was moments away from being proven right. For the first time that morning, nobody seemed eager to speak. The courthouse plaza settled into a strange stillness, as if the city itself had paused to watch what would happen next. Sunlight reflected across the tall glass windows above, scattering pale bands of light over the concrete steps. The flashing patrol lights continued their silent rhythm, painting brief streaks of red and blue across polished marble and dark business suits. Ava Brooks stood quietly beside her vehicle. Her hands remained relaxed at her sides. Her breathing was steady. The crowd expected frustration. Some expected anger. Others expected an argument. Instead, she offered none of it. She simply waited. Officer Ryan Mitchell shifted his weight slightly. The confidence that had carried him through the morning no longer felt as solid as it had 30 minutes earlier. Questions had begun gathering around him from every direction. The courthouse officials looked concerned. The reporters looked curious. Even Officer Kevin Ramirez seemed increasingly uncertain. Yet Ryan remained trapped by a decision he had already made. Across the plaza, one of the courthouse administrators lowered herself onto a stone bench and exhaled slowly. Another checked his phone again, reading messages that continued arriving from inside the building. The ceremony had now been delayed long enough for judges, attorneys, and county leaders to begin asking questions. The answers, however, had not yet reached them. A soft breeze moved through the American flags lining the courthouse entrance. Their fabric rippled gently against the bright morning sky. Somewhere nearby, a fountain sent water cascading over smooth stone, its quiet sound barely audible beneath the distant traffic. Ava glanced toward the courthouse doors once more. There was no frustration in her eyes, only reflection. She thought about the long road that had brought her here. The scholarships, the late nights, the courtroom victories, the setbacks nobody saw, the years spent earning trust one case at a time. Every obstacle had taught her the same lesson. Character revealed itself most clearly when circumstances became unfair. Her father's voice returned to her memory once again. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady. Never let someone else's assumptions decide who you become. Ava lowered her gaze briefly and smiled to herself. The moment passed almost unnoticed. Ryan saw it and misunderstood it entirely. To him, the smile looked mysterious. To Ava, it was simply gratitude. Gratitude that she had never allowed bitterness to become part of her story. Nearby, several reporters lowered their cameras for a moment, sensing that something important was approaching. The courthouse officials exchanged glances. Phones vibrated. Messages arrived. The atmosphere continued changing. Slowly, quietly, inevitably. Then the large courthouse doors opened once more. This time, the movement inside immediately drew attention. Conversations stopped. Heads turned. Even Ryan followed the shift. Something about the reaction spreading through the crowd felt different. More serious. More urgent. Ava remained perfectly still beneath the sunlight as footsteps echoed from inside the building and moved steadily toward the entrance. Whatever happened next, the waiting was finally coming to an end. The courthouse doors swung fully open, and an immediate hush rolled across the plaza. A group of senior officials emerged first, followed by judges, department heads, and county administrators. Their expressions carried a mixture of concern and urgency. At the center of them all was Chief Judge Eleanor Hayes. The moment she stepped outside, dozens of people straightened instinctively. Reporters lowered their conversations. Courthouse staff stopped moving. Even the officials who had been searching the plaza fell silent. Judge Hayes scanned the crowd once, then twice. Her eyes landed on Ava Brooks. Relief flooded her face. "There you are," she said. The words carried farther than she intended. Ryan Mitchell frowned. He looked from the judge to Ava and back again. The reaction made no sense. Judge Hayes descended the courthouse steps without hesitation. The officials behind her followed immediately. Ava offered a polite nod. "Good morning, Judge." The judge smiled warmly. "We have been waiting for you." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Ryan felt the first genuine knot of uncertainty tighten in his stomach. Waiting for her? Why would the chief judge of the county be waiting for a woman connected to a vehicle theft investigation? Before he could ask, another black sedan pulled to the curb. The vehicle stopped abruptly. A tall man in a dark suit stepped out. County Police Chief Daniel Foster. The moment he saw Ava, his expression changed completely. He moved through the crowd with surprising speed. "Ms. Brooks," he said, "I am so sorry for this delay." The plaza fell completely silent. Ryan blinked. Kevin Ramirez stared. Reporters exchanged confused looks. Delay? Not investigation. Not questioning. Delay. Foster finally turned toward Ryan. For several long seconds, he said nothing. Then he asked a single question. "Officer Mitchell, do you know who this woman is?" Ryan opened his mouth, but no answer came. The confidence that had carried him through the morning suddenly felt very far away. Judge Hayes folded her hands. The courthouse officials watched quietly. Hundreds of eyes remained fixed on the scene. Ryan glanced toward Ava. She remained calm. No anger. No triumph. No satisfaction. Just patience. Foster exhaled slowly. "This is Ava Brooks." Another pause followed. "As of this morning, she is the new district attorney of this county." The words seemed to freeze the entire plaza. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. A reporter lowered her microphone in shock. One courthouse employee covered his mouth. Kevin Ramirez stared at Ava as though seeing her for the first time. Ryan felt the color drain from his face. District attorney. The position carried authority over major prosecutions throughout the county. The woman he had spent the entire morning questioning was not a suspect. She was one of the most important legal officials in the entire jurisdiction. Foster continued. "The ceremony was supposed to begin 25 minutes ago." Judge Hayes nodded. "Every elected official inside that building has been waiting for her arrival." Ryan looked around and suddenly understood the strange reactions he had ignored all morning. The searching officials, the worried administrators, the growing urgency. Every warning sign had been there. He simply had not seen them. Or perhaps he had chosen not to. The flashing patrol lights continued reflecting across the courthouse windows, but now they felt strangely small beneath the weight of the truth standing before him. A complete silence settled over the courthouse plaza. The kind of silence that arrived when reality suddenly collided with assumptions. Officer Ryan Mitchell stood motionless. The words district attorney continued echoing through his mind, each repetition stripping away another layer of certainty. Around him, reporters began exchanging hurried whispers. Courthouse employees stared openly. Several attorneys who had watched the entire incident lowered their eyes. Ava Brooks could feel hundreds of people waiting to see what she would do next. She understood the moment better than anyone. A public embarrassment. A public misunderstanding. A public opportunity for revenge. Chief Daniel Foster stepped closer to Ryan. "Officer," he said quietly, "I think you owe Ms. Brooks an apology." Ryan swallowed hard. For the first time all morning, he seemed unsure of what to say. His shoulders lowered slightly. The authority that had appeared so effortless earlier now felt heavy. Human. Imperfect. He turned toward Ava. "Ms. Brooks," he began, then stopped. The words refused to come easily. Ava watched him patiently. She noticed something different in his face now. Not arrogance. Not suspicion. Regret. Genuine regret. Ryan looked down briefly before meeting her eyes again. "I made assumptions I should not have made," he said. "I believed I was doing my job, but I should have listened more carefully. I am sorry." The crowd remained silent. Nobody moved. Nobody interrupted. Ava could feel the weight of every camera pointed in her direction. One response from her could shape headlines before sunset. She could embarrass him. She could lecture him. She could remind everyone exactly how wrong he had been. Instead, she looked at him thoughtfully. Then she asked a question nobody expected. "How long have you been serving this city, Officer Mitchell?" Ryan seemed surprised. 25 years. Ava nodded. "And during those 25 years, have you ever helped people?" Ryan blinked. "Of course. Have you ever comforted victims?" "Yes." "Protected families?" "Yes." "Missed holidays because you were working?" Ryan hesitated before answering. "Many." Ava looked around at the crowd, then back at Ryan. A mistake should be corrected, but a mistake should not erase a lifetime of service. Several reporters lowered their microphones. The tension shifted. Chief Foster looked genuinely surprised. Ryan appeared even more stunned. Ava continued. "What happened today matters. Assumptions matter. They can hurt people. They can delay justice. They can damage trust." Her voice remained calm and steady. But accountability is not the same thing as humiliation. The words settled over the plaza like sunlight breaking through clouds. Ryan's eyes lowered again, this time not from embarrassment alone, from reflection, real reflection. Judge Eleanor Hayes smiled softly. She had spent decades in the legal system. She knew how rare moments like this truly were. Ava glanced toward the courthouse entrance. The delayed ceremony still waited. So did the responsibilities she had spent years preparing to accept. Then she turned back to Ryan one final time. "The law is strongest when it remembers the humanity of the people it serves," she said. "That includes everyone standing here today." For the first time since the flashing lights appeared that morning, the atmosphere began to change. Not because someone had won, not because someone had lost, but because dignity had quietly chosen to stand where pride once had. 3 months later, the memory of that morning still lingered in quiet corners of the county courthouse. Not because of the misunderstanding itself, but because of what followed. The autumn sun hung low outside the courthouse windows, casting long golden reflections across polished floors and dark wooden benches. Inside the main ceremonial hall, county leaders, judges, attorneys, and community members filled nearly every seat. At the front of the room stood Ava Brooks. The responsibilities of her office had already begun reshaping the county. New training initiatives had been launched. Community outreach programs had expanded. Trust between neighborhoods and public institutions had slowly started to improve. None of it happened overnight. Real change never did. Ava finished reviewing a folder and placed it carefully on the podium. The room buzzed with quiet conversation. Then the doors at the back opened. Officer Ryan Mitchell stepped inside. He wore his uniform, but something about him seemed different. Less rigid, less certain of his own assumptions, more aware of the people around him. He paused briefly near the entrance before taking a seat in the final row. Few people noticed. Ava did. Their eyes met for only a moment across the crowded room. No words were exchanged. None were necessary. Ryan looked toward the stage and listened as county officials described new partnerships between law enforcement and local communities. Programs focused on communication, accountability, understanding, lessons learned not from perfection, but from mistakes honestly confronted. As the speeches continued, Ryan found himself thinking about the morning that had changed him. For years he had trusted instinct above all else. He had believed experience alone guaranteed good judgment. Now he understood something different. Experience mattered, but humility mattered too. Across the hall, sunlight filtered through tall windows and illuminated the county seal mounted behind the podium. The gold lettering seemed to glow softly against the dark wall. Ava stepped forward when her name was announced. The audience rose in applause. Not loud, not dramatic. Steady, respectful, earned. She thanked the crowd and spoke briefly about justice. Not as punishment, not as power, but as responsibility. Responsibility to see people clearly. Responsibility to listen before judging. Responsibility to remember that every person carried a story that could not be understood from a distance. The room remained silent as she finished. Then applause returned once more. Ryan joined in. So did the judges, the attorneys, the courthouse staff, everyone. Outside, a cool breeze moved through the trees lining the courthouse lawn. Leaves drifted slowly across the sidewalks. The American flag above the building stirred gently against the afternoon sky. When the event ended, people gradually made their way toward the exits. Conversations resumed. Footsteps echoed through the hallways. Life moved forward. Ava gathered her papers and paused near a window, overlooking the city she now served. Below, traffic flowed through the streets. People hurried to work, to school, to home. Ordinary lives. Important lives. She took a slow breath and watched the sunlight fade across the rooftops. Behind her, the hall slowly emptied. Ahead of her, years of work still waited. But for one quiet moment, surrounded by fading light and distant city sounds, there was only silence. And in that silence lived something stronger than victory. Understanding.